everybody, to the Workforce Management Journey. I am Dr. Sarah Inman. I'm the co-host of the Workforce on Deck podcast, and I'm here today with my dear friend, longtime collaborator, and co-conspirator on all things workforce management, Mickey DeAngelo, who is the co-host of the new podcast, Talking Shift. We're teaming up to bring you a new co-branded series. It's going to dig into really the heart of the healthcare workforce management strategy. It's what we love. It's what we're passionate about, have spent the majority of our careers doing. And I really want to be clear from the jump that this is not just about staffing. So anybody who has ever listened to Workforce on Deck knows my passion about staffing, and I know Mickey shares it as well. We love to geek out about it, but this is really more. This series is really going to be about building a proactive, data-driven, and people-centered workforce model that actually works for your clinicians, for your leaders, and for your bottom line.
Yeah, I think you're dead on with that. And first and foremost, I just want to thank you for the invite. It's super exciting. We've been working together for so long, and now we get to do this together. And the word geeking out, I think, fits perfectly. And I think you're right. The idea is we really want to take this holistic look and look from soup to nuts. How does all this work together? It is an intricate, deep process. And I know a lot of organizations, they look at scheduling, staffing, timekeeping, and it's just one of those things they have to do, but they really don't want to do. And I think most organizations think of staffing, scheduling, and timekeeping as this necessary evil, but it goes so much beyond that. It is really part of a overall infrastructure that serves our patients, serves our employees, serves our bottom line. And so we're going to be looking across all of those elements of effective workforce management, from resource planning and recruitment to position vacancy to functional vacancy, scheduling, timekeeping, everything in between, and how all these points intersect to help us accomplish these big things. And yeah, we'll be talking about tough things like burnout affecting the industry as a whole, especially when we think of the resources that aren't available in our pipelines today. We'll talk about compliance, technology gaps, and I think really the biggest focus is how can we stop reacting, which is I think where most of us in healthcare are sitting, and really where can we start strategically planning and leading in a predictive manner to put us in a better position to take better care of our patients in such a difficult period in healthcare.
Absolutely. It's really unprecedented when we think about the nursing shortage and everything that organizations are trying to deal with every day, from budget cuts and insurance reimbursement. These are things that are impacting the lives and the livelihoods of people who are tasked with really what's one of the most sacred professions out there, which is taking care of their fellow humans. So this is something Mickey and I are both super passionate about. And because we can't get enough of this stuff and we love the opportunity to talk about it at any turn, we're not just going to be doing this series, but we're also going to take it one step further. And we're going to tie in companion webinars with this as well. We want to make sure that we're pulling in opportunities that it's not just you listening to us wax intellectual about all these things we're super passionate about, but that we're pulling in other experts. We're talking to clinicians. We're talking to people who are boots on the ground who are also dealing with this every day. And it'll give you, our listeners, an opportunity to ask some questions live as well. So if you're not already, make sure you go follow both of us on LinkedIn. Go find us. We share a lot of content. And again, as we go through this series, that's going to be an opportunity for us to really share more and connect with you all as well.
We'll call up one thing you said. I think it's easy to talk about nursing because nursing is obviously the backbone of any healthcare organization. But these principles we talk about go beyond nursing. As a matter of fact, I think it's one of my personal passion points. We have to bring this conversation out of nursing. You know, when we think of EVS, for example, and infection rates, workforce management and the ability of right people, right place, right time, important factor. Imaging is seeing one of the greatest shortages in a long time. Surge techs, I was just talking to an HR leader yesterday, same thing. So we definitely have to bring this conversation beyond just nursing and really make sure that we understand our whole hospital system really has a need. Now, don't get me wrong, nurses, you are the backbone, you are the heroes. I don't want to take away from that. But those of us that service healthcare and serve in administrative, we have to look beyond just nursing and make sure we're really taking a holistic approach.
You're so, so right. And I think that's the challenge, right? Is at the end of the day, and look, I fall into it too. My head goes to nursing and clinical staffing. And as you mentioned, it's so much more than that. When you are the leader of an organization, you have to think of all of the different components that go into effectively running a hospital, effectively running a health system. And that's really why, as Mickey and I sat together and mapped this out and what we really wanted to get from this series, we're calling it the workforce management journey for a reason. This is not the nurse staffing journey. This is not how we fix the clinical staffing problem. There are so many components that go into this, and one little break in the chain can create just mass chaos throughout an organization. So we're looking forward to jumping into it and talking more about it and getting the opportunity to bring attention to some of these things. One of the things Mickey and I were talking about before we kicked off this recording is we don't hear a lot of people discussing this today. This isn't something that we have had the opportunity to go out and sit down and listen to others, our peers in this space. And it kind of takes me, I want to ask you, Mickey, about, your new podcast. What led you to the podcast in the first place? Why did you decide to start your podcast?
I think it's what you were just speaking of. There's simply not enough voices. When we think workforce management, a lot of times, and if I meet with an organization, and even in the organizations I've been with, and we say workforce management, a lot of times what we're talking is position management, and say, hey, we're doing all this work and we have these governance structures and these processes to accurately forecast and have the right amount of positions available to meet patient need. But then we drop the ball and we don't utilize that staff efficiently or effectively, which is impacting our outcomes. And when I say outcomes, obviously primarily patient care, but not just patient care. We're talking about employee well-being, employee satisfaction. We're talking about our financials, all these type of things. And I think you're dead on. What we don't have is a lot of voices there. And so I worked in this space for the last 20 some years. And quite honestly, I spent a few years as I was with one hospital system in workforce management for call centers, which when I think of who does workforce management well, you got to look at the call center industry who has had software and processes and governance structures around that for decades to make sure, and they look at it in 15-minute intervals, and they build schedules and FTEs, and they have all these things around call-offs of forecasting to make sure you're the right people on the phone when you call. And when I did that for a few years, and I came back over into the workforce management on the rest of the clinical side, and I was looking at all of these awesome principles that are used on this side of the business, and we use none of it over here. And it started off this personal journey of mine of, man, what lessons can we learn? Is nursing or pharmacy a call center? No. But then I looked in retail and I looked in manufacturing, and I was seeing those same principles play out. Well, why can't we in healthcare? Like there's some reasons why, yeah, we're very different, but those reasons are probably a lot smaller. And so why a podcast? Because I think we need the voices. Healthcare's changing at a rate we've never seen before. Care models are changing. Government things are changing. Like compliance is changing. We just know that just was sent to the floor that minimum nurse-patient ratios are being introduced at a national level. Not for the first time, obviously, but how are we going to respond to that if there's not voices speaking into and addressing it as a holistic level? Within my own organism, working with my peers, I simply saw we tackled too much in silos. It didn't take a step back to understand how all this works together. So why a podcast? Because you're a voice, I'm a voice. I think it's going to take more than two voices to make a significant impact in our industry, but our industry desperately needs some rapid change, which, side note, we're not good at rapid change. but I
Yeah,
don't think we can afford not to anymore.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's why I was so excited, when you told me that you were going down this path. And it's one of the reasons that Vince Jackson and I started our Workforce on Deck podcast. We were two people that just said, oh, we love talking about this stuff, but who is out there for us to talk to? And when I go out and I want to consume content, I'm looking for the things that are most relevant to me. I'm looking for the things that impact my life. And to your point, I wasn't seeing the other voices out there. You and I have known each other forever, so I always knew I could pick up the phone, call you, call some of my other friends in the industry. But in every hospital I walk in, every customer that I serve in my day job, I hear them talking about this and they're asking questions and they want to spend time with me just to say, what are you hearing? What are you seeing everywhere else? Because while we all are dealing with a lot of the same challenges, we're stuck in our little silos, right? I'm in a hospital in Orlando, Florida. This person's in a hospital in Los Angeles, California. We are heads down and not collectively sharing what we're seeing, what we're learning, and what's working. And to your point, with all the change that's happening, and as quickly as we need to be able to pivot and move to keep up, we've got to be out in the open. We've got to be sharing our experiences. So why not a podcast? Everybody else has one.
I think you bring up a great point, though, that while we're a couple voices, there are awesome things being done out there in the field, innovative, new thoughts, and we have to provide a platform outside of just your annual conferences,
Mm-hmm.
which are phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but we have to provide a more regular conversation to learn from one another. And I think just podcasts are a healthy, good way to do it. And side note, those of you listening to this podcast or when you join Talking Shift, man, I my ask of you is don't just listen and then walk away. Like, I know we're going to provide ways for you to join in a conversation and keep it going post episode. And in this case, we'll have the LinkedIn where we can continue the conversation, but it has to go past this. And so I would say continue the conversation well outside of the 20 minutes, 40 minutes that you spend with us listening. Let's continue this conversation well past, because it's going to take all of us. It's going to take the village to really make meaningful impact.
It is, and I'm going to offer this up. And Mickey and I did not talk about this in advance, but I have a feeling he won't care. If you're sitting here listening to either one of our podcasts, I would love it if your next step was reaching out to one or both of us and saying, hey, I've got a topic I would really love to talk about. We want to have you on. So if you are
Yeah.
somebody who's out there right now in the industry, please join us. We want you to be part of this conversation with us because, to Mickey's point, right? There are amazing people doing such awesome stuff in this space. Let us help amplify that and let us get those great ideas out to other people so we can have that change multiply across the industry, because there's a positive impact not just on patients, but on business outcomes, on work-life balance, on people's job satisfaction. There's so many different areas that workforce management in general touch that it really just gets distilled down to staffing, when at the end of the day, it's so much bigger. So we want to hear from you. We want you to join us.
Yeah, I would. Well, and if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't get how all this strategy works together, you don't have to. There are very tactical items or maybe strategic items, and you don't understand how it fits within the big picture. That's okay. Let's take an example just for virtual nursing. Obviously, move beyond a fad is now a trend in the in the industry, and it's here to stay. I mean, it's moving beyond that, where now hospital at home programs are becoming increasingly popular. Like, we're going to have to talk about that from both of those from a workforce management standpoint. So that's like one example. You're like, oh man, we do virtual nursing and we're doing really well. Okay, that's a great conversation. We can bring in some of that background topic, but if you are doing that well, that gives us the basis to have some strong conversations and the interconnectedness it may have to these other components.
Absolutely. And that's my favorite thing about this is, again, I will sit for 8 hours and talk about this stuff if given the opportunity. So I know that I
I
want to
do
talk
every
about it.
day.
Yeah, literally. I mean, it's what I'm paid to do. They talk about turning your passion into profit, and here we are. I love talking about workforce management. Now I'm paid to do it. Again, there are people out there who are doing cool stuff who know more than us. There are people who know more than me. There are people who know more than Mickey and I combined collectively. And we want to talk to you. So if you're out there and you're interested, really, really hope you'll reach out, whether it's joining us on the workforce management journey segments that we're going to be doing, or just individually having the opportunity for us to sit down with you as part of a larger conversation on one or both of our podcasts, because goodness knows there is enough conversation to go around. I want to talk a little bit about us, if you'll indulge me, Mickey. We want the people to get to know a little bit better. So I know what your career journey's been. Talk a little bit about that. What drew you to this space? Why are you so passionate about this? Why are you doing this to the point where you've literally made it your career?
Oh my gosh. So I'm gonna actually go further back, and I'm gonna be like, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, how did Mickey get from that to this? So as a young professional, I was actually a chef. I spent until I was 30 years old, I was a professional chef in
I did
Cleveland.
not know this about you. I had no, this is the first time hearing this. Like, how did we get from A to B?
It's not the most healthy environment, if you will.
Mhm.
And something in my life had to change, and ended up having a real strong spiritual moment where my life was radically changed. Well, in doing that, I started working with youth, right? And I immediately started investing in young kids because I wish I needed that in my life. Well, working with kids requires nights and weekends, and so does being a chef. Something had to go, right? A friend of mine was the finance director for nursing at a major hospital system here in Cleveland, Ohio. And he's like, hey, there's an entry level position in the staffing office at the main campus nursing. Why don't you go do that while you do your youth thing? And I was like, perfect. And I came in and I fell in love with this whole idea of, and my personal passion really has been developed since that time, is really to help every person find their purpose and equip them to realize it. And to me, that's what workforce management is about, particularly healthcare workforce management, where our goal is to help people be them best selves, physically and otherwise, right? If you're a clinician and we don't have you where you can make the greatest impact, are we helping you be your best self? Probably not. And so it ended up being this whole thing where it moved my career. That hospitality background is still very much a part of who I am. It doesn't leave you, right? But as I saw the listen, those that don't know, 90% of a kitchen is actually about efficiency and production. And what I saw is, oh my gosh, I could never run my kitchens this way. We really have opportunities. So I fell into it, Sarah, but because I have a passion for people,
Mhm.
um, and I have a passion for, and this is one of the things I love about nursing, is evidence-based practice. And so marrying that evidence-based practice, give me the data to support the decisions we should make that benefit people. Like this is the perfect marriage for me. And obviously I'm pretty passionate about it.
This is one of those types of careers that if you're involved in this in any capacity, your 5-year-old doesn't walk up to you and sit down and say, Mommy, I want to go into workforce management when I grow up. It's one of those, all of us have found some circumvented way to get where we are today. And I feel like that's why these conversations are so important, because all of us have such varied backgrounds that have gotten us to the space where we're in, and bringing the pieces of those into the larger conversation. To your point, the hospitality piece of, I care about people. So I want to get this right because I'm taking care of people. That's my favorite thing to say about why I do what I do. I'm taking care of the people who take care of people, because I'm no longer at the bedside and I miss it every day. Every day I miss taking care of patients. But now I feel like I get to give back in some capacity, because I may not be providing the direct patient care, but if I'm making sure that the administrators, the nurses, the doctors, EVS, pharmacy, radiology, every single person that touches a patient, they're getting paid correctly. They've got the correct work-life balance because they know what their schedule looks like. They feel good about their job. That means I'm able to participate in some small way. I think we kind of cracked the code. It's because this is a people business, and the people who do this care about people.
I don't want you to fully unpack this because I want to have you on our podcast and talk about this one day. And A friend of mine used the term of I moved from bedside to boardroom, and that's kind of what you've done. What
Mhm.
what moved you from bedside to boardroom in this case?
Ah, it was a complete accident. I walked into orientation for a job as a trauma medic, and I was 18 years old and looked every day of 18 years old. I walked into orientation. One of the administrators looked at me and said, "You're pretty young. Are you good with computers?" And I said, yeah, I guess so." And they said, "Hey, well, we just bought this new timekeeping software. You want to learn it?" And I said, okay. And they said, "Oh, it's okay. It's just kind of a side thing. Like, we just need somebody to help be an admin, kind
Other
of do
duties as assigned.
yeah, other duties as assigned. In between putting in IVs, things of that nature, we also need you to help update time cards." This just became something that I knew and happened to be good at. I liked the system. And when I moved back to Florida, where I am now, the licensure requirements were different. So I was used to being able to do significantly more within my scope of practice. Somebody said, "Hey, would you be interested in running a staffing office?" And I was like, "Huh? No, why would you think I'd be interested in running a staffing office?" They're like, "Well, you're a super user with this software, like, you know staffing." And I said, "Oh yeah, I guess I do." My favorite thing is, how hard can it be? I've got that gene, right? Of like, I can probably figure it out. And I loved it. I did not think I would. The stress and fast-paced nature of running a large staffing office for a massive health system is the only thing that I've been able to find that's similar to being in a trauma room, just in terms of the, "Oh my gosh, I gotta get this right. Is somebody gonna have to come in?" It was a weird adrenaline rush that I wasn't gonna get anywhere else. And it kind of escalated from there into continuing leadership positions and continuing to work in staffing, working at you and I's prior organization, and just everything I did revolved around workforce management. And because I loved it so much, I kept learning and I kept studying. And when I had the opportunity to go back and get my doctorate and had to sit down and decide what I wanted my dissertation topic to be, I was like, how can it be anything than workforce management? Of course, my dissertation's in staffing because it's just something that no one's ever been able to crack the code completely. I'm never bored. I have not been bored a day in my career as a result. And I constantly get to try to solve problems for people that really, really impact their lives. So for me, it was a no-brainer. How could I do anything else?
So let me ask you a question. And I don't think I haven't arrived. I don't know it all. You don't know it all. I mean, you're way smarter than me, but
I don't know about that.
whatever. How long do you think it took you in your career until workforce management clicked as a principle? Like how all this works together and
So my answer, and I'm not saying this to be glib, there are still some days that I go, "Oh gosh, do I know what I'm doing? Have I really figured it out?" But I would say it was probably a couple years into running the staffing office where it stopped being that reactive firefighter approach, right? Of somebody's called out, I've got an open shift, I got to figure out what to do to fix it, until I was able to really kind of step back and start going, hang on a second, there's a systemic issue here that I have to solve for. And the open shift, the call out, the not being able to staff my units is a side effect of the larger problem. And again, attacking it as a clinician to be able to kind of diagnose of like, oh, it's workforce management. I'm not doing staffing. That just happens to be a part of the job. But it took a while because no one was talking about it. It was, hey, fix your staffing. Why is the ED short? And I still see people today that are just where I was 15 years ago because they don't have anybody telling them and no one's having these conversations.
your aha moment was in the staffing office. I started in the staffing office, but my aha moment was doing workforce management and call centers and then transitioning and being like,
Mhm.
gosh. So, but both of us were embedded within workforce management for years. Like that's all we did all day, every day. So if it took us years while we were embedded in it, here's my biggest ploy. How can we expect our nurse leaders, clinical leaders, again, not just nursing, right? How can we expect them to get it at the level we do? I don't think we can. And to those of you that might be clinicians and nurse leaders, know that my expectation of my podcast and not this conversation is for you to get every intricacy. I want you to understand, see the forest through the trees. Don't get me wrong. But I think when I think of what I'm trying to do in the industry, we have to build governance structures and processes and technology that makes it easy for you to make good, sound workforce management decisions, because I don't want you to learning all this stuff that Sarah and I have learned. Like that's not, we're gifted in this because that's why we're so passionate about it. You're likely gifted in a specific clinical area, or in your leadership abilities or your coaching abilities, being able to influence the next, the next generation of clinicians. I want you to embrace that. I, you need to run a clean business on your floor, but embrace the side that you're gifted in. Let Sarah and I, and hopefully others that join the conversation, try to make it easier on you to make the right decisions.
And could not possibly have said it better. And I think the biggest takeaway for me as you're going through this series, and I'm going to give everybody a quick run through of kind of what those episodes are going to look like, but you don't just wake up knowing how to do this. Between Mickey and I, decades and decades of experience where we have lived and breathed it as the boots on the ground people, and then have gone in and taught organizations and their teams and their leaders how to do this themselves. The information we have and the knowledge we have has been hard earned. And we didn't just wake up and go, oh, I know what to do from a governance perspective. I know what to do about my position allocations and what to do when I have a 27% vacancy rate. These are things that come with time. And the hope really is that we're able to take some of these much larger concepts and drill them down so they're not as scary. They're a little easier to understand. And even if you're able to just start applying little bits of this to your life and your career, I hope that you're going to wake up one day and be as passionate about it as we are and go, you know what I should do? I should call Sarah and Mickey so I can get on their podcast.
Love it.
That's the goal. We're building a coalition here. What are we actually tuning in for? We have to have some structure to it because Mickey and I will literally just talk for hours. So what we're going to do is take you through some of the key components where we've got an opportunity to cover things at a high level, I'll say, and then the corresponding webinar that's going to go along with it, which again, we're going to do that on LinkedIn. We'll share all the information. That's where we've got an opportunity to get a little bit in the weeds. And the goal is having the listeners, having, people who are joining us who are just kind of intrigued about the conversation, sharing their comments, sharing their questions so that we can get into some more of the specifics. So episode 1, introduction to the workforce strategy journey, really talks more in depth that what both Mickey and I have mentioned today about this really being a holistic approach. You can't just think about staffing. You can't just think about your open positions. It truly is a journey, and there's a lot of different stops along the way in order for you to get where you need to be. Next episode, we're going to talk all about resources. It's not just the open shifts. It's not just, oh, I had somebody call out. We're going to talk resource planning, recruiting, vacancy management. So going through really how to plan for that. People are going to leave. If you wake up and just say, oh my gosh, I'm so shocked. I can't believe somebody decided to retire, or I can't believe Susie won the lotto and didn't decide to stay working 65 hours a week for my business, then you're going to be in trouble. So we're going to talk about that and really what the effects are, but also how you get proactive and you can start planning. Then we're going to talk about functional vacancies, the hidden staffing problem. This is not just, hey, I've got an open position, right? Like, it's people are thinking about it from the perspective of position control. So not to derail here, but this is an area where I really want you to jump in.
As an industry, we've traditionally thrown a lot of spaghetti at the wall, hoping something sticks. But there are strategic methodologies to actually meet the need if we take the time to actually practice those evidence-based. And you're right, it is certainly an area of passion of mine.
Next episode 4, is my thing, which again, all things staffing. So we're going to talk about scheduling. We're going to talk about staffing. We're going to talk about balanced schedules. Not, hey, here's your tips and tricks, kids, for how to balance your schedule. It's more than that. How do you optimize your scheduling solution? How do you make sure that you're not burning out your staff while also ensuring that you've got bodies where they need to be to get your business done? How do you, as a leader, have the opportunity to leverage years and years and years of experience and best practices to optimize your workforce?
I think we're exacerbating this whole nursing shortage and staffing shortage because of what we have, bad practices we have just sitting in that space. I'm so looking forward to that conversation.
I cannot wait. There is nothing I like talking about more than staffing. So in addition to me finding a new hobby, we're going to wrap this series with a little something on timekeeping and the role of timekeeping in workforce success. It's the backbone of your workforce management strategy. And if you don't get that piece right, how are you ever going to get anything more complex right?
I'm going to give you a preview into that. When we talk timekeeping and to do it efficiently, we're circling back to the scheduling conversation.
It all comes back to scheduling. It really does at the end. See, how can I get a new hobby when it all starts and ends there anyway? So, uh, before we wrap here, Mickey, what are you most excited about, or what are you most hoping that listeners take away from this whole little endeavor that you and I have embarked on?
Other than just calling you and I geeks of, I can't believe this is what they're so passionate about.
Anyone who's ever met us already knows we're geeks, and now a whole bunch more people are going to be validated that all of those people are correct, and I couldn't be happier about it.
Beautiful. I think in terms of really what I want people to walk away from, I want everyone to walk away with every episode, be it this series we're doing or something on the Talking Shift podcast that I'm doing with Josh Ambrose. Really, I want to have one tangible item, one aha moment of, oh, wow, I can bring that to my organization or to my unit or to my people today. So I'm always looking for that. The quick wins, I think, are important for us all to gain momentum. But beyond that, I think the biggest thing, I think I stated it earlier, I really want people to be able to walk away to see the forest through the trees, that when they're having conversations that previously they just thought of this one item, they take a step back and they understand, okay, this one item has consequences across the entire journey, and that we need to step back and maybe pull other people in or take a deeper thought and not knee-jerk react so quick and not be so reactive to real needs. And I'm not taking away from that. We're trying to respond because there's real needs. I just want us to respond in a meaningful, sustainable manner.
Once you get to a place where you really can look at things from a more holistic perspective and go along the journey, not that those things go away, right? There's always going to be an issue. There's always going to be an emergency that you have to deal with. But if all of this conversation can help make people's lives 1% better with every little thing that we share, or, some new story we're able to tell, or give them clarity into a different part of their business that maybe they weren't considering before, then that's a win. We're expanding the staffing, scheduling, workforce management geekdom even further along in the universe. So, what could be better than that? More people for us to sit and have a meal and geek out over staffing with.
That sounds wonderful to me, actually.
It sounds great, right? I'm like, God, how do we need to make this a thing? So we've got meetups and stuff. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Mickey, I'm so excited to do this with you and just get an opportunity to really kind of put some of these thoughts out into the universe. Cannot wait for my own starring turn on the Talking Shift podcast here coming up. And you're certainly I hear a lot from Mickey on the Workforce on Deck podcast, and really hope that you go out, subscribe, of course, anywhere that you get your podcasts. If you're listening and have some ideas about something that you'd love to see us talk about during the webinar, please share. And until next time, Mickey, thanks for being on the podcast, and can't wait to continue the conversation.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to talking with you and everyone else a whole lot more.